This strange clod of earth would hardly catch the attention of a dog owner's mind at first sight, but as he gently brushes away the soil, some hidden marvel appears, and a moment of wonder is created out of a nondescript walk. It all happened in the blink of an eye. As was often the case, Max was out in front, his black and white fur a flame of energy. His master, Oliver, had gone into a reverie about plans to be made in the immediate future when, without warning, Max stopped still. His nose twitched and his ears pointed as he sniffed up something peculiar. "In crawling, Max?" "Come here, boy," Oliver called out. But Max was already off, dodging through the bushes toward a narrow dirt path parallel to the main street. Oliver let his breath out, quickened his pace, and followed Max's lead. When at length he arrived at his dog, he found Max standing quite still, his head fixed intently on something on the ground. The thing resembled nothing so much as an oddly shaped lump of clay, half buried in the beaten path. At first glance it was covered with a tight coating of mud and, to a person unaccustomed to dealing with such matters, seemed unimportant. "What is it you have there, old fellow?" Oliver said, stooping to see. He reached out a tentative hand to poke the lump with his index finger. It was hard, coarse, and curiously shaped like a small boulder or fragment of stone. Yet there was something unsettling about it. Max pushed at the being with his nose and let out a low whistle. Oliver, curious, felt his trepidation mount. He flicked off some dried mud with his fingers, and there underneath was a small patch of something remarkably not mud. He peered hard, and his curiosity was enlisted. "Well, that's odd," Oliver whispered to himself. The surface underneath wasn't hard, like rock, or firm, like clay. It was softer, more supple. And when he pressed lightly on it, astoundingly, it drew back inside almost as if it were somehow like skin. Max whined again, this time more insistently, prodding Oliver into action. Unusual restiveness for Max, who was normally sedate, let alone during his walks. Something about this strange lump disturbed him. "Okay, Max, let's find out what this is," Oliver said, his voice full of wonder and a tinge of worry. He reached down and picked up the lump, commenting on how surprisingly heavy it was. Much heavier than it had appeared, as if it was laden with something. With Max hot on his heels, Oliver traced a path back to the town, his mind reeling with a flurry of questions. What was this they had stumbled upon? Was this some kind of animal stuck in the mud, or something altogether different? As they neared the village center, Oliver noticed the now familiar sign of Brent Lodge Wildlife Hospital, a humble yet renowned animal clinic in service to the community for years. It was managed by a committed team of animal lovers who, over their years of work, had seen everything from injured wildlife to abandoned home pets. If there had been any explanation about this strange find, it would have to come from them. Oliver pushed the clinic door open. The bell at the top rang softly. Emma, the clinic's receptionist, a woman with a gentle gaze, looked up from her work. Her smile faltered at the look of concern that was etched across Oliver's face. "Oliver, what brings you here today?" "Is Max okay?" she asked, looking down at the pet, who sat obediently at Oliver's side, his eyes still fixed on the item clutched in his owner's hand with distress. "It's not about Max," Oliver replied, his voice low with apprehension. He lifted the mud-covered object, partially obscured by a number of layers of parched dirt. "It's this. We found this while out on our walk. I don't know what it is, but I don't feel good about it." Emma's eyebrows furrowed as she took in the object. "I'll go phone Dr. Harper," she said quickly before heading for the rear room. The head veterinarian of the clinic, Dr. Laura Harper, soon appeared, wiping her hands with a towel. Tall, in her late 30s, she exuded a calmness that instantly put both animals and their owners at ease. But then she saw what Oliver held in his hand. The look of concern replaced her usual calm expression. "Let's take a look," she said, motioning Oliver to place the lump on the examination table. Oliver hastened to comply, and Dr. Harper got to work immediately. Her hands spoke of a decade of experience as she began carefully picking off the layers of dried mud. As the mud flaked off, the form hidden beneath came increasingly into view. The more Dr. Harper uncovered of the object, her eyes began to widen subtly. What had seemed initially to be nothing but a lump of dirt was slowly revealing itself to be altogether something else, something alive. "Oh dear," Dr. Harper murmured to herself, turning toward Emma. "Fetch me a warm cloth and some isotonic solution quickly." Emma nodded and disappeared into the back room, coming back briefly with everything Dr. Harper had requested. The now warm isotonic solution took the cloth as Dr. Harper began to meticulously remove the rest of the grime. A small hedgehog curled up, its spines hidden under a thick layer of dirt and earth, slowly emerged underneath. It wasn't much alive. Its small body shook incessantly due to the cold temperature. "It's a hedgehog," Dr. Harper announced, in an effort to modulate a voice that almost betrayed her feelings of relief and anxiety. "The poor thing appears to have fallen into mud and got its body hardened into the soil. It's really a miracle that it is still holding its own." Emma had placed a small bed beside its nest. When Dr. Harper entered the clinic that morning, she found that the hedgehog was moved, though hardly in its temporary nest. It was only a tiny move, but it gave her hope. "Good morning, little buddy," she whispered, leaning to check on the animal's condition. The hedgehog was half closing its eyes, performing a slow blink against the light. It was still weak, but the fact that it was awake and responsive to them was an encouraging sign. Over the following days, the hedgehog improved gradually. It began to take small amounts of soft food-pureed fruits and special hedgehog chow offered by clinic employees. Every day, some sort of improvement could be perceived, be it through an animated twitch of the ear, an investigating sniff of the surroundings, or even a tentative flexing of its front legs. The hedgehog had become dear to the treatment center's personnel, including Dr. Harper and Emma. They coddled it with attention to make this little animal happy and well-fed enough. Curiously enough, other hedgehogs in the clinic also expressed interest in their recovering little buddy, watching it from a distance with a pair of keen eyes. The hedgehog that had been rescued was turning out different every week. What once came in as a quivering, fighting creature blossomed into an energetic explorer, investigating each nook of his enclosure with vigor. Oliver visited the wildlife center, becoming more and more positive. This hedgehog was doing well, gaining weight, and getting very vital. But as the animal began to stabilize, the most difficult decision now rested with Dr. Harper. Whereas the most natural end that everyone had in mind was to reintroduce the hedgehog into its natural habitat, she feared that such an extended care would blunt its survival instincts. "We've healed its body," she confided to Oliver one evening, "but I'm worried now that it'll never be able to survive on its own anymore." Oliver shared this concern, having grown attached to their spiky patient. The staff came up with a transitional solution, an outdoor enclosure that simulated the hedgehog's natural habitat complete with dirt, flora, and places to hide. Much to everyone's surprise, it instinctively took to it, foraging and investigating with natural curiosity, yet still showing attachment to human comforts. On the day of release, all assembled at a carefully chosen woodland location, well away from any roads and human life. Oliver, Max, Dr. Harper, and Emma proudly watched their little friend, getting ready to go back to his wild home, a place filled with natural shelter and food sources. Dr. Harper had placed the carrier beside a thick cluster of bushes at the release site. He opened the door and the hedgehog hesitated, his tiny nose twitching in the fresh air. After a few tentative steps, it shuffled into the wild, disappearing seamlessly into the undergrowth after one final glance at its human carers. The group watched in silent reverence, pride mingling with an unexpected sadness. Max nuzzled close to Oliver, silently offering comfort in the face of his owner's struggles in this bittersweet moment. "You and Max gave that little creature a second chance," Dr. Harper said softly as they made their way back toward town. "That's something special." Oliver summoned a small smile. "I just hope it lives a long, happy life out there." "It will," she said with a smile. "Thanks to the two of you." Weeks had passed and life got back to normal, but something was incomplete with their evening walks. One evening, Max's head suddenly went up. In a split second before Oliver could react, his dog was running towards the back door, barking in that strange, eager tone. As Oliver opened the door, his heart almost stopped. There, on the doorstep, sat their hedgehog, the very small creature they had set free weeks ago. It nuzzled Oliver's extended hand and calmly waddled forward as if it had never left. Max was wagging his tail with excitement, and he gave his little friend a gentle nudge. The grunt that came from him was contented. Oliver smiled, his heart full. It would seem that their little hedgehog had decided to make its home near the ones who saved its life, forming a bond stronger than any of them had imagined.